everyone. I guess we're competing with a hockey game tonight, so don't want to keep us abreast of the score there. So thanks everyone for coming. For those that don't know me, I'm Eva Vincent and with the Ladysmith Residents Association, and we're hosting tonight's town hall. And as you know, we did have a full house when we did the all candidates meeting, which had a lot of views, so that was great. I'm just going to say, if you're not already a member, and I know a lot of you here are, of the LRA, I encourage you to join. The membership fee is $20, and it goes towards hosting meetings like this, website development, BC registry fees, etc. Strong group of volunteers that will keep you up to date on issues in the community and holding events like this. Our annual membership runs from September to August, but by joining now, your membership will carry over until September of 26. I am streaming tonight onto our Facebook page, and we don't have the camera set on the group, but just realize if you're going to ask questions, your voice could show up on the Facebook. And then also, as you ask questions with Staff Sergeant Bush, please keep them brief and respectful. So I do want to take a minute now to introduce our guest this evening, Staff Sergeant Trevor Bush. Staff Sergeant Bush assumed the Ladysmith RCMP detachment commander position this last February. However, he's not new to Ladysmith. Staff Sergeant Bush has lived in Ladysmith for about 7 years, and previous to the Ladysmith position, he worked out of the Duncan RCMP detachment. He is an 18-year veteran with the RCMP and has a strong commitment to community policing, is passionate about helping communities build resilience, protecting livelihoods, and our environment. We are very appreciative. He has agreed to speak to us tonight and provide an overview of the results of the community questionnaire and the department's annual performance plan. Thank you.
Thanks very much.
You.
Will you guys be able to hear me okay if I don't use the mic?
Sure.
All right. Since it's a nice small group, please just feel free to ask questions at any point. I hope it'll be informal and valuable to everybody, but I have no problem being interrupted and taking a tangent left and right as we need to. I hope you'll find it information, at least something new anyway. So I thought I would just tell you a little bit about our detachment. Some of you may not know kind of the structure of it. We have 14 members of the Ladysmith detachment. So there's myself, 2 corporals. We have 1 constable who's hired specifically under a community tripartite agreement with Staminas as part of Indigenous policing services. And then we have 10 constables that are policing the calls that we get in the town. We have almost 15,000 people in our jurisdiction, so that's a fairly large population for only 14 police officers. Population of Ladysmith is close to 9,000, and then roughly 6 in our regional districts that we support. So our jurisdiction is at the Nanaimo border. Nanaimo River is where we switch to the Nanaimo detachment, and then at the south it's sort of like Porter Farms for those of you that know that. And to the east, it includes Penellicut and Thetis. So, and then most of everything to the west is Timber West and uninhabited, but we border with Lake Cowichan's rural jurisdiction, which is somewhat significant when we're starting to talk about things like search and rescue and people that are lost out in the bush. So it's a fairly big area for our number of people. The detachment is operating 24 hours a day, but we're not staffed 24 hours a day. After 4 o'clock in the morning, the officers are on call until 7:30 in the morning. So that means they're at home with the police car and all their gear, and if they get called out, then they got to get dressed and then come out to the call. To get to a 24-hour police station, it's usually a much larger town. So like Souk is the one that recently went to 24-hour policing. They have 23 officers and a bigger, much faster growing population. So just to give you a perspective compared to Ladysmith. So what is our annual performance plan? I'll just describe that for starters. So the job of the police officer is to go to the calls and do investigations. That's what we're hired to do. Now, most of crime fighting is reactive. Something happened, I've been a victim of a crime, I need someone to investigate it. Reacting to crime does nothing to prevent crime. So we need to have some time in our day built in to do something proactive. And the thing about proactive policing is you never really know what kind of impact it's going to have, right? So if I divert someone from crime, I'll never know how many police files they would have generated had I not done that preventative method, right? But I think through the research and crime reduction, we do believe that preventing those preventative measures do have an impact. It's just something we don't measure in statistics like we do with the responsive type of calls. But to give you an idea, between a member going to a call, doing an investigation, and all the things that happen behind the scenes, doing paperwork, filing reports, sending in a report to Crown Counsel, we don't get a lot of time for proactive. It's usually in the neighborhood of like 12 to 20% of an officer's time is available for them to do proactive stuff. So that's what the APP, our annual performance plan, is about. It's about that small 20% of their time in their day where they get to go do something productive that will prevent crime. So that's kind of what it is. It's important for a number of reasons because we want to hear from the community to make sure that we're doing the things the community requires of us during that proactive time. Last year's annual performance plan was focused on traffic, engaging with vulnerable populations, community events, patrols on Staminas and Penelakut, check-ins with our staff to ensure member wellness, career development, and keeping a healthy office and things like that, and other things to just build morale in the detachment. So the process for the RCMP to get to this point, our fiscal year starts and ends on April 1st. So we're now in our first quarter of our financial year. When we get to February, March, and we're at the end, we're at the tail end, that's when I usually come to the community and start asking for consultation and to find out how we're going to change the path for the next year. So in February, we published a community consultation survey. And to my knowledge, that's probably the first time that that's been done in Ladysmith to get that kind of feedback. Other options are in-person town halls, and I've done those in Duncan. They can be good. They don't necessarily draw a lot of people, so this year we went with online just to see how that would turn out. So the point of that questionnaire was to get the feedback and then go have meetings with all of our different area directors, the chiefs of each nation, and the town of Ladysmith, and get that agreement to see that we're on the right track. So we started with that questionnaire. We had about 524 people access it online. 283 provided responses, but sometimes the responses dropped off. About halfway through the survey, people get tired and they just log off. We still capture the data, which is actually pretty valuable. And 163 finished it completely. So still a pretty good rate, almost 60% completed it. And for the first year introducing a new questionnaire to the community, it was pretty good numbers. When I tried this during COVID in Duncan, the first year in Duncan we had 90 people do the survey. And then the second year we had about 500. So we're already beating those numbers. I hope next year we do it again. It'll sort of gain some notoriety and people will start to do it. So out of those respondents, 89.5% were all from the town of Ladysmith. The survey asks which town you're associated to, so almost everybody was from town of Ladysmith. We asked what were the priorities based on what was in last year. So road safety, police community relationships, employee member wellness, and reconciliation were what we asked. They all scored roughly about the same, a little higher than others, but basically fairly equally across the board as a priority. Not one stood out among the others as a priority, right? We asked the community, how satisfied are you with the police? And it was 55% satisfied with the Ladysmith detachment. So 20% very satisfied, 35% somewhat satisfied. So I think the number was pretty good. I know we're hoping for 100, but I'm realistic. We don't always get 100. We then, I'm not sure if anyone here has done the survey. Hopefully some of you know what I'm talking about. Good. We had a lot of opportunities in that survey for people to write. It wasn't just yes and no answers. We really wanted those answers typed out. So after that question, we had 6 pages of comments about what could be better, what could be improved. And I read all of the comments. There was some good feedback. There was a lot of actual thank yous in there, which was nice to see, and I shared those with my guys. And of course, you always get some negative comments too, but we listened to all of it. We asked people how safe they are, how safe they feel during the day. 96% said they feel safe in Ladysmith during the day. and at night, 81%. So again, I think that's very, very high, and I do think that accurately reflects what I see in the town as well. We asked if people felt there was enough police. 47% said there were too few. 33, almost 34% said probably about enough. Now I take that with a grain of salt because not everyone's coming at it from a policing background. They may or may not know what's too many and too few, but that's people's sentiment about it. We asked if people were comfortable calling the police. 85% said yes, and most are very comfortable. This was an interesting one. Out of the people who did the survey, we asked, had they called the police? Are they the folks that need the police? Most of them were not. So they're taking the survey because they're citizens in town and they care, but they're not necessarily the ones who are affected by public safety questions or crime. So that was just something that was interesting. So 50% of the people who took the survey did not need the police. And yeah, sometimes we ask questions about what their experience was like because we've had complaints about calling the dispatch center and the delay it can take. Most people in the survey did not experience those problems. Another question was regarding media, keeping the public informed, and this was an area that I took notice of, that we're not doing a good enough job, and I think that's fair across the RCMP in general. So we don't do a lot of media sometimes, and the reason for that sometimes is because we can't compromise an ongoing criminal investigation. So we can't speak out about it as much as we maybe want to the public, but it's something I have talked to the town about, and I'd like to do more things like this to talk to people in the community and maybe try to get out and do more media releases. So that's something I'm going to work on this year. And again, we had lots of open-ended questions where we got another 12 pages of comments, just general feedback. So the survey actually provided a lot of information. The summary that I took away from that survey was that generally people in town are quite happy with the detachment. They feel safe in the community. They want to see the police officers more by either going to the events and getting out of their car. They want more media and more news about what's happening in their town. They feel like they will call us when they need us. And generally, we had a lot of very positive comments about and support about the detachment. So those are the results that we had in the survey. I can maybe just pause for a minute if there's questions about the surveys in general, or we can keep going. Yeah.
Not about the survey specifically, but your earlier comment that you've got 14 people for 15,000, and that's a little bit light. So that surprised me. Like nationally or provincially, is it like seems to be about 1 per 1,000?
Yeah.
Here.
Yeah.
Is that?
That's actually right in the ballpark, I think.
Right.
I'm not totally sure the formula that goes into it. I think a lot of that formula is dollars.
Yeah.
There are certain ratios about, they call it POP to COP, population to police officer ratio, is that 1 to 1,000 that you mentioned. Other things that the organization looks at is the serious crime index. So are we facing the very serious types of crime in Ladysmith compared to, say, Nanaimo or Duncan? And we're not, actually. You can Google, Times columnist publishes it almost every year, and Ladysmith is like the 4th lowest on the list for the island for serious crime. So that's the homicides, aggravated assaults, kidnappings, the really bad stuff. We're very low, so that's an indication of safety, I guess you could say. So these things all go into that ratio, but ultimately it would come down to the municipality choosing to pay for more officers and the province. So it's a ratio right now where the province funds 5 of our positions and the city pays for 8. And so I live here as well. That's on my property taxes and all of yours. And so it has to be very justified to bring that cost to the taxpayers if it's necessary.
So organizationally, because I don't know anything about the police, so
yeah.
you're the lead of this detachment.
Yeah.
And then you report to what, a regional guy or?
Yeah, so being a huge federal organization, there's almost 25,000 Mounties in the organization. Yeah. I have a supervisor. I report to Island District headquarters. The Island District is one of 4 districts in the province. We report to the commanding officer of British Columbia. He reports to the commissioner of the RCMP in Ottawa.
Yeah, great, thank you.
Yeah. Sir?
Yeah, I guess my question is, you can, I guess, get some priorities for your survey. I was wondering what influence sort of municipal council has with priorities. And do they influence how you do your policing?
I have to say, I've had a really warm welcome here since I started in February. The council has not tried to direct me or influence me in any way, shape, or form. They've taken my insight and recommendations wholeheartedly. They're not in charge of directing the police station. So we have to operate at arm's length distance, and we're not influenced by fear of favor or a political party or anything. The police have to remain insular from that.
Raises a question for me. If there is a concern, picks up car theft, and council says, hey, you know what, we want to see about getting more attention to car theft, how would they go about going to bring that back to you if they're not direct?
Yeah, good point. So I'll explain a little more about our priority. So we have our plan, which I'll get into next, about what we decided to do for our annual performance plan. But policing is very, it fluctuates greatly, right? Particularly property crime. That's a perfect example. So one property offender gets out of jail, decides to move to our town, and the stats that I'm going to share with you will go through the roof. When we normally would have, say, 5 or 10 incidents of property crime, one offender can come in and do 12 or 15 things. Well, that's a 600% increase in property crime. So we have to be very reactive to that. So while we have our goals to fill our 20% of our time, we're going to react and adjust and pivot, use an overused buzzword. We'll pivot to where we need to when things happen in the community. So good question. Yeah.
Just to clarify, the hours that your detachment is open, that somebody could get you. You said you stop at 4 a.m. and you start again at 7 a.m.?
7:30, yeah.
Okay.
But we are available 24 hours a day.
Right.
Yeah.
But
So anyone can reach us through 911 or our non-emergency line 24 hours a day, and they will get a police officer. Yeah.
Okay, so those other 3.5 hours?
A member is on call.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
You guys probably,
I'm sorry?
and you guys probably rotate, like who's
Yeah.
on call, like 1 week you'll have so-and-so, or do you have it where the newbies have to?
No, everybody takes a turn. Everybody takes a turn. Yep.
Yeah, I did have another question that was kind of, like, when I moved here about 4 years ago, like, I was sort of like of the understanding, although probably got told to me by somebody that didn't know any better, is that they also, like, a lot of times, like, the Nanaimo police officers might also come out a lot of times, like if there's gone up and whatnot, like, so is this thing with, like, is this like more recently, or you guys just don't have Nanaimo?
No, good question. So each police jurisdiction operates separately. So there was never any arrangement ever in the past where Nanaimo came and helped. But that being said, if I'm in distress and I hit my panic alarm on my radio because I'm in a fight and I'm potentially losing the fight, every Mountie from the province who is available would come to help. So there's these rare exceptional circumstances where, yes, if things were going completely off the rails, I know my friends in Nanaimo and my friends in Duncan would be here to help. But this town, our jurisdiction, is not their responsibility. They're paid by their municipalities to work in their town. The other thing you may have heard is we do have units that move through multiple jurisdictions. So one of those being BC Highway Patrol. And that is, so their mandate, they base out of Victoria, Duncan, Parksville, or Campbell River. And they're responsible for the entire island. Their job is, as the name says, highway patrol. And their mandate is to just do tickets and serious crashes. And they'll send me a schedule when they're coming to Ladysmith, and they will work the highway for the day, for the shift, and then they go back to Parksville or back to Duncan. So we do have some of that. We do rely on a few other support services, like when we need a forensics officer, the forensics officers are based out of Nanaimo. But they're a provincial asset to service all of the detachments. We have access to police dog services that are based out of West Shore or Nanaimo. So if we need a dog, we can get a dog. We can get a helicopter when we need a helicopter. We can get the emergency response team when we need it. And that might mean 15 guys in green camo are coming to town. So there's a time and a place where we do use all the different services, just like we would use the National Forensics Laboratory in Ottawa. So being RCMP, we have access to all those services across the country, whereas say Saanich or Victoria, they're dealing with their services in their detachments and that's it. But the responsibility for our jurisdiction is Ladysmith's responsibility.
And Chemainus has, like Chemainus and Crofton, sort of like have their own
They fall under North Cowichan, Duncan.
Oh, okay.
Sure.
There is an online reporting system.
Yeah.
For minor property crime and stuff.
Yeah, thank you for bringing that up. I was going to touch on that. So the online, you can go to our, I didn't bring the website, sorry, I don't have it off the top of my tongue, but you can Google Ladysmith RCMP, you can find our website, and you can click on online crime reporting. That's for things like, I came back to my boat trailer and I noticed the license plate's missing. I need a file number to go down to ICBC to get a new license plate. And I don't want to wait on hold for 25 minutes. So you can go to online crime reporting, something like that. I don't know when my license plate was taken, sometime in the last 4 months. Those are files that have very small or almost no investigative options. You're doing it as an administrative function just to get a police file number for usually insurance purposes. If you have something where it's important to you and needs investigating, I encourage you to call. It helps us ask better questions. Online crime reporting is a one-way flow, and we may not get to ask you enough.
That,
Yeah. Yeah.
Very little feedback.
That's right. I'll just jump back into a few of my notes and then I'll take some more questions. So everything we do is tracked at the police station, obviously, and we record our stats. So at the end of 12 months, at the end of March, I get my staff to prepare a report. We present it to all the chiefs, councils, and area directors. So assaults, which includes common assault, assault with a weapon, aggravated, includes criminal harassment and uttering threats. It's kind of a bulk category. Assaults were down 11% over the last fiscal year. Sexual assaults, which is a number of different things as well. Sexual assaults were down 50%, and the numbers are very low as well, the individual numbers. Missing persons were down 19%. Mental Health Act apprehensions were down 17%. Mischief, which is a number of different things, was down 4%. Break and enters was down 27%. And all the thefts together stayed roughly the same, basically the same number. So those are pretty large decreases actually. The Island District, who looks over the entire Vancouver Island, shared a report with me, and crime across the entire island was down 6.5%. So we were down more than that here at Ladysmith. So I think I'll just share.
What do you attribute that decrease to other than?
That's always a tough question. Yeah, I don't know that I can give you a good answer. It's so varied, right? Yeah, it's hard to say, sorry. Crime can be up or down for any number of reasons. Yeah.
A lot of it's demographic.
Yeah, it could be a number of reasons, right? You know,
One age group committing all the property crime.
yeah, property crime, like I worked on a property crime unit for a while and it fluctuated the most, whereas like assaults can be things like a domestic dispute between a married couple or a common law couple or something like that. Those may not fluctuate. They might, seasonally we see changes. We do in policing, things change in the summer versus the winter. Things change around staff holidays compared to and other Christmas or other holidays. Crime fluctuates a lot. Sometimes day of the week, crime fluctuates for those reasons. And other days, it just seems to go sideways for no rhyme or reason. So it's hard to really pick the trends. We do use crime analysts. We have access to them in district headquarters. Some of the reasons we use crime analysts are to try to help solve things. So like a rash of break and enters, they'll take a look and try and determine trends for us, things like that. So for our annual performance plan, I brought it with me here. After the survey and after listening to everybody and hearing from my officers and everyone we talked to, we went with 5 themes, broken into 5 categories, and then we'll be measuring our effectiveness on all of these as well. So the first one is road safety. So proactively increasing our enforcement and education to reduce collisions on the roadway and improve public safety for motorists and pedestrians. We'll be targeting impaired driving, Motor Vehicle Act violations. We'll be focusing on school zone, proactive school zone enforcement, proactive distracted driving campaigns, impaired driving check stops, speeding enforcement, and we've partnered with ICBC to do proactive events with ICBC. I can talk more about that because we've actually already done 2 of them. The next one is our police and community relationships and increasing police visibility. So one of those areas is supporting restorative justice. The town is supporting the LRCA. They've hired a restorative justice coordinator, and we've met with them and discussed how we can support the program, so we'll be ensuring that we send them enough referrals to be effective. The other way of increasing our visibility is foot patrols. Officers will be out doing more foot patrols in highly visible areas that are either for public engagement or prevention. So that can be anything from walking First Ave, going down to Transfer Beach, or going out to some of the areas that we know people congregate in woods and unhoused areas and things like that. And we've got a lot of requests to attend local community events in schools. So we've already done 20 or 25 roughly in different engagements. I just had the junior forest wardens come to the detachment for a tour. We've had the air cadets. We had a class of disabled autistic students coming from the high school. We've been down to the Easter egg hunt and car shows and just different things like that to get the officers out engaging more with the community. The next theme is relationship building with Indigenous communities, reconciliation, accountability, and governance. Working within the community tripartite agreement and the agreed letter of expectations, the RCMP will work to help improve public safety and build sustainable relationships with Indigenous communities. So as I mentioned earlier, we have one position that's funded specifically under that CTA, that community tripartite agreement, and that officer spends all of his time on Staminas. We also have to try to get to Penelakut, which is logistically challenging, so we don't get there as much as I would like. We're going to try to make that more of a proactive initiative. And the officers are asked to do more proactive patrols and Staminas when possible. The other one, same as last year, we're keeping the employee and member wellness and training, promoting a healthy and thriving workplace where staff can grow their careers. So checking in with our staff, making sure we have wellness activities and that we're promoting that everyone is fully compliant in their training, so they're at the best possible ability to do their job well, and that they're also developing themselves in their career and thriving in the detachment. A healthy workforce is going to make for better service for the community. And the last one is accountability, leadership, and governance, which is why I'm here tonight. Really, it's providing open and transparent communication, not only to the leaders that are elected, but to the town. So it's something I really value. Consulting with the local government and First Nations, the community survey that we just did. I send the local leadership a weekly email to keep them apprised of what's going on in the detachment. And I present the quarterly statistics to those groups. And I'd like to increase our media, as I mentioned. And we're also focusing on doing some RCMP recruiting. So if we can attract other people, so that maybe I can retire one day and get some people to come fill up from the back side. So. Yes, sir?
Well, recruiting ties right into my question. If you were to advise a young person who's interested in getting into the RCMP, the best path, I'm thinking educational path, that sort of thing, what sort of is the right route there?
Yeah, that's a great question. So the question was what to tell young people thinking about this for a career and what route to take. It's extremely varied. So a lot of people think they need to go to BIU and take a criminal justice certificate, that it'll help or it'll speed up their application. It's really not necessary at all. So I have almost 19 years in this job, and when I joined, it was a huge different group. So anywhere from a 19-year-old that did high school and really very little else after high school, all the way up to a 52-year-old gentleman who joined and spent most of his life living in another country. We've got guys with high school, we've got guys with masters, and some with PhDs. Everyone comes from a very different background. My advice for young people is go find something that you're passionate about and follow that for a while. Get some life experience. The number one reason people get rejected at their first application is for a lack of life experience. So if they've grown up in one town, one house, and they're still relying on mom and dad for a lot of things, they don't have that maturity and that life experience yet to come out and start making some of the decisions that they're going to have to make. So recruiters will often tell them to go out and do something for a while. It really doesn't matter what, as long as they're staying out of trouble. Like, that's obvious. The application requirements have really stayed the same over the last 20 years. It's Canadian citizenship, driver's license, clean background. Like, you don't need a PhD, you don't need a criminal justice, you don't need to be, AAA athlete, but you need to meet the minimum standards. And after that, we're really just looking for the right character. So the RCMP has our core values. We're looking for honesty, integrity, compassion, professionalism, accountability, and respect. And I think I haven't been in recruiting myself, but the interviews and the process for screening are more about finding the right character than they are a particular path that you've taken to get there.
So no police academy like the 80s movies?
Well, there's lots. I won't go down that road. There's lots of information on YouTube about what we do when we get in, but I'll just say we go to depot in Regina. We go for 6 months at training in Regina. We spend 6 months there at the police academy. Then we come out to our first posting, and we're paired up with a senior officer for 6 more months of on-the-job training. So it's all available. There's lots of good videos on YouTube. You can find Rick Mercer's video and see if you can pick me out of that video. So, yes, sir.
On the recruiting, so how is it now? Like, if you got lots of recruits?
We're looking for people all the time.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're still hiring. It's a huge organization. There's lots of people that are retiring. You know, our demographics are just like the demographics in society right now. So there's lots of good jobs in the RCMP. Yeah, I don't think people are being turned away. I know Depot is running at basically full speed. So they're putting about 45 troops a year through. So out of 52 weeks, that's almost a troop a week. They skip a couple holidays and Christmas and stuff, right? But a troop is roughly 30 people, so times 45 troops. So lots of people are going through the academy. Yeah, I can just, so I just shared the performance plan. So far, I'll share with you some of the results already. Just in April, we already had seven impaired drivers caught, prosecuted, 52 different variations of different tickets and or warnings, 14 extra proactive school zone patrols that we were able to do, 19 different times we were out doing speed enforcement. The ICBC projects that I alluded to earlier, I'll tell you a little bit about those. So we were invited to join the grade 11 class at Ladysmith Secondary School for a presentation by Kevin Brooks. He's a guy about my age who made some poor choices when he was in his 20s, drinking and driving, and ended up as a paraplegic. So he now gets hired by ICBC to go to talk to kids about the risks and what he did in his choices. So it was very nice of them to include us and to be there to answer some questions with the kids about consequences for drinking and driving. And the other one we did, myself and Constable Martin, our IPS, we went out to Staminas with ICBC and we talked to their entire class, like grade, all the senior classes, I should say. And we brought out these little pedal cars and we get the kids to wear impaired vision goggles and then run an obstacle course and to simulate what it would be like to try to operate a vehicle while they're impaired. And then they also run the same obstacle course with distracted driving things. We give them a calculator and we make them do math problems while they're trying to drive. So it's like texting and driving. So couple initiatives like that already with ICBC. With restorative justice, we've already sent 2 referrals. We've been out for about 20 foot patrols. That's just in April. We've attended 7 different community events in April. Did over 26, actually I think that number's wrong. I think it was about 37 patrols out in Staminas. We made it over to Penelakut once a month as we were hoping. We did a few different wellness activities to recognize our staff on Admin Support Day, just to keep their spirits up. And yeah, most of the other ones were, the community consultation, the mayor's meetings and whatnot. So I'm optimistic that we're gonna blow our targets out of the water. We're doing really good already with May as well. So, but that being said, if things change throughout the year, we can adapt, and we'll put our focus where we need to if the community's needs change too. So, that's kind of what I had prepared about the stats and how we arrive at our APP and what our APP is. So I'm happy to take some more questions.
These results, so you did put your hand up.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
Yeah, do you guys, sort of like do wellness checks or deal with people having mental health episodes, and do you bring along sort of like a person, like
Yeah.
a medical person along with you? I have to tell, well, I've had lots of, well, anyway, a couple of months ago, I was talking with somebody that I kind of knew, who I could tell he was going through a real mental health thing, and then as soon as I walked away, I saw a cop car come in, and they went and took the guy down.
Mm-hmm.
I think we're putting him in handcuffs, and the guy was saying, help me, but I kind of knew, like, the cop, but I kind of thought, oh my gosh, like, were the police, like, waiting for me to leave the guy?
Yeah, that's a good question. So I felt like answering this earlier when you had a question, sir. So policing has changed a lot in my 19 years. When I started, it felt like we were enforcing the criminal code. It was theft, impaired driving, assaults. It was criminal code investigations. Well, in 20 years, society has changed a fair bit, and a lot of things have changed, and we see that with things like the drug use and the unhoused populations and decriminalization that took place in British Columbia. So now what I would say about policing is the majority of our calls are actually for the Mental Health Act and a lot of check well-beings. We do much less of enforcing the criminal code for those things like theft, violence, assaults, and impaired driving. We go to a lot of calls that are, please go check on so-and-so for me. I'm concerned about them. And so we're, under the BC legislation, we are the enforcement area for the Mental Health Act. And I actually shouldn't say enforcement. We have authority under the Mental Health Act to apprehend, not arrest, apprehend, and bring someone to a doctor. And so we do that a lot. Those files are quite challenging because there's a whole number of reasons why people are struggling. They're in psychosis. It may or may not be related to drug use, may or may not related to their lifestyle. But you would be surprised that anyone at any point really can have a bad day and they end up in a mental health crisis. It can be across all socioeconomic levels, in fact. And we take those people to a psychiatrist, and they're assessed at a hospital. So we do. That's over 50% of our work now. It's very much less so now on crime fighting. It's now checking on people and the Mental Health Act.
Because I listen to a lot of CBC, and I have heard so much about cops that, like across Canada, whatnot, that have been called in to check on somebody, and somebody gets killed, and it's usually the person, like the police are trying to check in on the person, they end up causing this person harm and whatnot, and they've talked about bringing along sort of like a psychiatrist, like bringing along somebody who has a mental health thing, that if they show up with somebody who has more the mental health.
Yeah, sorry, I didn't answer the second part of your question. So we do work closely with, we don't have those services in Ladysmith. Unfortunately, we're limited here on what we have for services, but they are available to us in Nanaimo and in Duncan. So in Duncan, there's a considerable amount of services, and a lot of them, because we're still falling within the CVRD, we can still access and refer people to things like the substance use outreach team. And we also liaise with the crisis nurse team in Nanaimo as well. So they will come down to do mental health checks. In Nanaimo, they do have pilot projects where the nurse is wearing body armor and he's with the police officer, and he will go to the call with the police officer. They do have those projects in certain communities like in Surrey and in Prince George and I think in Victoria, but in a small detachment we don't have that luxury. So we do a lot of referrals and they do a lot of follow-up with our clients. The officers themselves, however, we are pretty well trained in like crisis de-escalation techniques, along with our other training. But we're not psychiatrists, we're not doctors, we're not nurses, and a lot of those mental health calls can be volatile and unpredictable. And you're right. On certain occasions, they do end up in a police use of force situation. But I would say in 99% they don't. Our officers are very good at de-escalating people and talking to them and getting cooperation. But it is certainly a risky part of policing because things can go from very calm to very violent on those calls. So it's a risk.
I was going to ask about the results of your plan. You said they go to council and
Yeah.
reports. Are they readily available publicly?
Yeah, so good question. So I'll be presenting at the town council and to the chiefs and area directors quarterly. So our fiscal quarter is April, May, June. So at the beginning of July, I'll go to the very next committee of the whole meeting, and the report that I provide to the council will be available online to the entire community through their minutes. So you can go online, you can watch those. I believe they're open to the public. You can attend or you can watch them virtually. And any of the reports I provide are open source to the public. Yes, sir.
Can I ask, I've met some exceptional RCMP officers, Western Canada, Northwest Territories, Yukon, but unfortunately, more often than not now, as read in the Chronicle, it announced they were coming to speak here. An article that decided that an RCMP officer that's gone off the rails has done something. I understand there's an officer in Ladysmith here now that may be on leave. I don't know if it's paid leave. I'm just wondering if, you know, there's honor among thieves. I'm just wondering, in the RCMP, is there not something where the officers kind of try and, you know, help other officers that are obviously off track? How is this that's going on?
Yeah, I do know the person that you're referring to, and that was all before I transferred here. So it is kind of embarrassing, I think, when you wear this uniform and you get judged by every other person who wears the same uniform, right? We always say it's the same patch on the arm, right? I take pride in what I do, and I come out to do my best, but I might be judged because you've met an officer in Sicamous 10 years ago who was a jerk, and you automatically will think that I am. So we do face that a lot. We're wearing a uniform, and you have to just put that on your shoulders and take it. There's 25,000 RCMP officers. I watch the same CBC that you all do, and I see the same news about 5 or 10 or 15 a year who get themselves into trouble or go sideways. That's out of 25,000 police officers across this country, right? So I can't stand up here and tell you that every single one of them is perfect. I know that that's not the case. I know that we do try to correct people. We're held to our RCMP code of conduct, and there's consequences, just like the military has. Like, we're a paramilitary organization, there's rules to be followed, and there's consequences for members when they don't follow those rules. And ultimately, we're bound by the same laws of every citizen in Canada, so that officer will be facing charges in criminal court, and ultimately then through the system, he's going to face consequences with his employer. So it is sad for me to hear those stories, and we're humans, and I am sympathetic. People make mistakes, but I'm also frustrated when I wear the same uniform and I'm maybe judged because someone else made some pretty poor choices.
Excuse me, I've heard very good things about you, so. Just tonight, driving here, I goes to Stolo Road. police car comes out into the merge lane, into the lane, across over to the fast lane, not a signal light anywhere. And then he's, you know, doing 100 or 120, no lights on or anything. Is that allowed or?
Well, when you put it like that, it certainly doesn't sound like it would be. No, so we have a lot of policy, a lot of rules. One of those is our emergency vehicle operations policy, our EVO policy. And if we have certain privileges under the Motor Vehicle Act that we're allowed to use electronic devices, obviously, our computer, while we're, we can break the speed limit, but those all come with caveats, right? Siren and lights have to be on to do that. To break any other law that people otherwise have to follow, we have to have our emergency equipment activated. The EVO policy also is very, very strict when it comes to any kind of chasing of people. It has to be like only the most exceptional circumstances. So, I encourage people to report that type of thing. We have to have accountability within our organization. I will say too that officers they're trying to get somewhere quickly. There's probably a good reason, and they're multitasking at the same time. They've got a couple different police radios going off. If you've seen inside our car, we've got a laptop, we've got a radar unit, we've got a radio, we've got a camera. Your normal dash starts to shrink, and the cars also have a silent patrolman and a lot of things that start to get in the way. So I'm not trying to make excuses for them. I know it probably sounds like that, but if we have a bad lane change sometimes, or we don't get the lights turned on as quick, it's probably because we're just doing too much multitasking. We don't have good vision out of those cars. But I know that is an excuse. The lights and sirens should be on.
Anytime over the speed.
Anytime yeah. And if we're driving through Ladysmith at 3:30 in the morning, and we know that the streets are dead and quiet because people are all in bed at 8, we will sometimes use discretion not to keep the siren on right up to your doorstep because we wake your neighbors and the whole darn town. But yeah, driving a police car is one of the biggest risks, I have to be honest, and I encourage my guys to really do a solid risk assessment. Getting to the call is obviously a priority, but you're endangering the entire town when you get from A to B, so it has to be only as necessary. Driving is where we have some really unfortunate mistakes. So,
Thanks.
I'll come back to you, ma'am. Yeah.
Block watch.
Yeah.
How important is it to you guys? Because we've been trying for the last year and a half to get ours up and going in a new brand new subdivision. And we've got people on the list, but we're not getting any help, anything coming down. We did meet with Constable Palmer.
Yeah.
What, a month ago? Yeah, and things were supposed to happen, but.
Yeah, so being new, I can't really speculate on what happened before, but coming from Duncan, they have a community policing organization that's hired and paid for by the CBRD. And Duncan has, about 73 officers now. And even with all of those officers, there's just so much to do that supporting all those other units and other teams and other relationships and organizations can still be difficult. So now in a 14-member detachment, with all the other responsibilities, we don't have a dedicated position just for outward liaising with other groups. Like, we're all trying to do those things off the side of our desk. So that's an officer who's got a full caseload, APP responsibilities, training, everything, and then his commander is put on top of him. Would you also please talk to Block Watch and get something going? So I think it's important. I think community, we can't do our job. We can't do all of our job. We rely on a lot of stakeholders. And a lot of things that I like to promote are preventative. So Block Watch is the biggest one there, along with the emergency management, right? So when people take steps to be prepared, then they're not going to have to rely on a hospital or a fire department or police. So I think those programs are incredibly valuable, but we need them to be very autonomous and self-sufficient too, because we don't have a staff to run them.
But we need the equipment to do it. Like, we don't have brochures or anything. We had to beg, borrow, and steal to get, we can't go door to door.
So can Block Watch fundraise or ask the town to pay for those? Like, is it the RCMP's job to fund those and pay for
Because
those.
Block Watch is through the RCMP.
No, it's separate.
But all the brochures and everything have RCMP.
Yeah, a lot of the material is all branded, but it all runs separate from, community policing programs, speed watch,
Well, our
safe
speed,
zone.
yeah, our
like-
speed watch, our community program died because
Yeah.
no volunteers.
So I guess the short answer is those programs have to be volunteer-led because we don't have the staff at the detachment to lead them.
So we have to ask council for money to print up more brochures and,
There's blockwatch.bc.ca, I believe, and it can all be purchased and ordered right from there.
okay, what about the ID? Like we've been in for our criminal record check, but we don't have our ID yet. Like
Yeah.
it's hard to go door to door.
Right.
You know, with your bare face hanging out, you wanna give me your email and your
Yeah.
information, it just doesn't work.
Yeah. Okay, well, we could talk more about that. I don't know if the RCMP is responsible for providing that ID. So I've never worked directly with the
Yeah,
Block
good.
Watch before. In Cowichan, all of those programs are run by Cowichan Community Policing, separate from the RCMP. It's run with CVRD funding. Those positions are paid for by the CVRD. It's an independent society, and that society distributes and runs programs that are approved by the RCMP, but they're not led and run by the RCMP.
Ours here has been, because
Yeah,
I've been
okay.
Block Watch for 6 years.
Okay.
And it's
So for
always
me, it's
been-
gonna be brand new, so you'll have to catch me up to speed because it's the first time here where I've had a Block Watch to work with. I've been in 6 detachments and none of them have had a Block Watch like this.
Okay, because we're supposed to have a constable on.
Okay.
So, okay.
Yes, sir?
First of all, a comment. I know there's just 141.
What's that, sorry?
The Oilers.
Oh, he said this is the
Oh,
hot one.
all right.
It's just, okay.
Or maybe not, maybe they didn't.
That wasn't the point. I know we're a room full of Oilers fans here, so we're not getting like this.
Don't believe him.
Other thing, what if you could just give us a 3-minute primer on what the BC drinking and driving rules are?
Oh, boy, put me on the spot. It'll be shorter than 3 minutes. It's illegal. So I don't know if you're referring to, so there's the criminal code, impaired driving.
Percentage of alcohol,
Oh.
but, you know, when they
Oh,
measure
okay.
on the roadside.
Yeah, sure, I can talk about that, sure. So the Criminal Code of Canada is the law and the legislation on impaired driving. You cannot operate a motor vehicle, vessel, train, aircraft, et cetera, with over 80 milligrams of blood and 80 milligrams of alcohol in 100 milliliters of blood.
Blood and
0.08.
alcohol.
0.08 is the number. That's the legal definition for the operation, cannot be over. So there's 2 offenses. There's operating while over 0.08, and then there's impaired driving. Impaired driving is more of the behavior. You can be impaired and not be over the legal limit, depending on your body's ability to process or affection by alcohol. Now in British Columbia, we've also got provincial laws, immediate roadside prohibition. So in British Columbia, the officer will administer a breath sample on a roadside approved screening device. That can now be done to anybody without suspicion. The law changed where it's mandatory. Any driver can be stopped and asked to provide a breath sample. And if they are over between certain number, it'll be a 3-day impound or longer. 3-day driving suspension or 90-day driving suspension. So I think probably Googling that on ICBC would be more accurate than I can give you right now. But and then we also have another one, which is a 24-hour. There's a 24-hour suspension that can be administered as well. And the rules are different if you are a Class 5 driver, full license, or if you're a Class 7 driver who has an L or an N. Those drivers have a restriction on their license for 0 milligrams of alcohol in their body. And so a teenager, let's say, who's getting their license can have 0 alcohol, and if they're subjected to a test and they have 0.01, which could be maybe 1 beverage or less even, they will face punishment for that. So the laws do become very complicated, and I know you wanted a better answer.
Well, at least you told me where to go look for it, so that's.
Yeah. And one more point, though, we're also facing a lot of drug impaired driving these days as well. So, like right now, I would say the number one, ICBC gives us some talking points, but the number one cause of crashes is more distracted driving and speed than it used to be alcohol-related crashes 20 years ago. Most people know that if they're drinking, they should stay home, but they're still texting and driving. They're still taking substances and driving. And so we do have some techniques that we can use to detect drug-impaired driving, but it's a lot of other specialized training, so we don't have as many officers who have that skill. But we are trying to target the drug-impaired driving as well, and distracted, of course, and excessive speeding. So, for a lot of folks that aren't really otherwise affected by crime, they have a safe home, safe job, safe town, they live a good lifestyle, they're not going to be a victim of crime, and they're not going to go commit crime. They're affected mostly by traffic, because everybody is then a driver, and so you're on the road, sharing the road, and at risk due to other people's behavior, even if you're otherwise living a very safe life. So traffic is the number one thing we hear from people who generally don't call the cops. They talk about traffic, and it's because their roads are very busy. So,
I have a question. You mentioned, of course, everyone's got questions. You mentioned the survey results, and one thing that you noted was that you needed more media involvement, improvement in the media, and part of your AAP performance was, you know, the accountability, and you're doing the quarterly reports to council. Eons ago, in the local paper, there used to be a crime watch section where there was a little blurb, not to add to your already endless paperwork and reporting that you're doing, but is there any consideration for doing something like that? Because what we see in social media is, you know, oh my God, that guy had a backpack, and call the police, and like how many calls like that can you have before you're like, you become desensitized to it? But if there was information provided, like I always say, in the absence of information, by human nature we make stuff up.
Sure.
So.
Yeah, no, the reason I was smiling is because the council and the mayor asked me the exact same thing. Could we do the monthly crime beat?
I hang out with the mayor.
Could we do something like that? So we're going to give it some consideration.
Great.
Yeah, and try to share more information. Again, there's lots of things that the detachment could do, and I would like to do, but we don't have the manpower to do all of them. So some detachments can run a social media account. I don't have the staff and the manpower to do it. Duncan is giving it a try right now. I don't have the staff to have a full-time media person. We're just a small police station. So I can try to do some things, but yeah, when you mention the online thing, that is important. I follow all the online groups that I can in Ladysmith. I think sometimes there's information that's valuable. There's a lot of misinformation, and there's a lot of things on there that I find are not reported to the police. And if you scroll down in the comments, usually somebody will say that, hey, you got the license plate, you got a photo of somebody doing X, Y, Z, did you call the police? And more often than not, when I see that, they didn't call the police. So I don't know if people are interested in just putting it on social media to shame or embarrass, or they really don't think that it's worth calling the police, but I would like to see those reported to the police.
So using that as an example, though, if yourself and other members of your detachment see those things and you can trace it back to something, would that be an area that you'd be proactive in and say, okay, that seems serious enough that we need to...
I hear what you're saying, but I'm not going to spend all my personal time scrolling Facebook to make police files. That's not my job, and I don't think it should be my job.
No, it shouldn't.
If people want things investigated, they have to report it. Yeah. Yes, sir.
I suppose my question is sort of related to what you were just saying, what you're wishing we would do.
Yeah.
And so I was going to say to you much of tonight as being what you can do for us. How about if we turn the tables around?
Yeah, thank you.
And if you could...
That's great. I really appreciate that kind of question. So with Block Watch, it's really about a community coming together. Like, there's a handful of us who can do policing, right? But a safety of a community comes down to everybody. It's about neighbors looking out for neighbors. You can sign up for Block Watch. You can volunteer with some organization in town. We rely on volunteers at search and rescue. I'm a member of the Marine Search and Rescue. There's 30 volunteers there that give freely of their time to rescue people on the water. When someone goes missing in the woods, it's not the police who find them. It's those volunteers, the search and rescue. You know, firefighters, there's people who volunteer for Rotary that make the community a better place. Like, 14 police officers aren't gonna change this town, but the community will change this town, right? So it's, and other things can be, you know, ignore social media, and go online, make an online crime report, tell us about it. Or, you know, when the power goes down for 8 days, check on your neighbor. Do that emergency preparedness thing, like get to know your neighbor, create a block party. Well, that prevention goes a long way. You know, if you're looking out for your neighbor's house when he or she goes on vacation, it's a lot less likely to get broken into. You know, you're taking the newspaper off the front step, you're turning the lights on and off, you're, you know, doing whatever. But policing, reactive policing is, the event's already happened, that person, you know. So the community can really get behind a lot of volunteering and just to make it a better place. So.
This isn't my question I wanted to ask earlier, but I want to make a very strong comment about that. I lived in Nanaimo for like 30 years, and the last 8.5 years, before I got renovated out here by a very abusive smuggler, but anyway, that's a whole other story. Is like I was involved with the Seek Up organization, which I'm still involved with. I have to talk to them on the phone at our meetings. And remember there, and we had, well, like there's Sergeant O'Brien, which you've probably heard of, and every time there was a crime or every time there's like he's in the Nanaimo News Bulletin and whatnot. But I remember I'd also, in a couple of neighborhoods I lived in, like he talked about setting up like a block watch, like when I was living by the hospital area, like he came to talk about block watch, and then I ended up moving down to Nickel Street, and I think he was involved with that. But one of the things that I remember him saying is that if you know the names of your neighbors, you have just cut the crime, like you've just cut the crime down, that type of thing. And the Seeker group has actually, for like the last 30 years, well, I think they're kind of doing some block watch stuff, but they've been heavily involved. Like they're a very well-known community organization in Nanaimo. And I was reading about them when I was living up in the north end of Nanaimo. I was reading about the Seeker group that was doing stuff like cleaning up alleyways and doing picnics, like holding picnics and whatnot, and having like monthly meetings and stuff like that. And we also like talked about doing the block watch thing, that kind of thing. So anyway.
Yeah, so criminal justice, they talk about the broken window philosophy. So
what about calling out nuisance officers? Sorry.
If you know, if a community is no longer thriving and the businesses are boarded up, well then it's no longer an appealing place to go down to First Avenue, and then another business will board up and another one will board up, and before you know it, half the street's boarded up, and then people move in to start sleeping under vestibules, and it's a slippery slope and things go down. You can probably picture some of our neighboring communities that's happened to, but we fortunately don't have that in Ladysmith. So people contribute to the health and this town thriving. That affects the crime in this town, right? A thriving, healthy community is supporting your local businesses. It's getting out, it's walking around downtown. Instead of stepping over something that's broken or damaged or litter, it might just be something like picking it up and just taking 10 seconds to make the community a better place. So yeah, I think we have this, the statistics really do show that we have an incredibly safe, thriving community. My mission is to keep it that way, and that's what our team is committed to doing. We don't want to see it adopt some of the social problems that are in other communities. Yeah, I think that is the plan, and you'll be able to follow along on those quarterly reports to see how we're doing. And I hope that in next March you'll consider providing some feedback if you feel we need to change direction. We'll be doing those surveys again and looking for a lot of feedback from the community, and hopefully just keep us on the right path. And please hold us accountable. That is part of our core values in the RCMP. We are accountable to this community, and we want to do the best to keep it thriving and healthy and safe for everybody.
Great, thank you. Thank you very much, Staff Sergeant Bush. I will look up that, I'll make a commitment to our group and to our Facebook members that look up that online recording and share that link.
Yeah,
So that
thanks.
people will then
Thank you.
have that, so I'll take that on, and that was really good information. And thanks for everything, appreciate you coming. Sorry we're a larger group, given the hockey game, but at least we had somebody keeping us up to date.
Yeah, thanks.
All right.
Great,
Thank
thank you.
so much.